But before I start on opening up the floor already for questions, what I do want to say is that a lot of people have, founders here have said that we want an investor who understands our business. I think it's equally important for you to understand what a venture capital business is. So we raise money, like Alka also mentioned. We also go on roadshows. It's very, very hard to raise money as a VC. In fact, it's much easier to raise money as an operating business, and I think not a lot of people understand that. So we suffer from multiple sort of issues that LPs, who are our investors, are called. So it takes a lot of time and effort to raise that capital. And our investors have a certain ask from us. So all venture funds have a certain life to it, unlike an operating business. Operating business can be there forever. So a lot of funds in India who are domiciled in India are typically 10 years or 12 years, which means that our investors want money back by then. Which is why it's often said that not every business is a venture fundable business. Because not every business can scale up appropriately where you can give return. So look at the return we have to give to our limited partners, which is it has to beat inflation, capital markets, and of course property, which everybody in India loves as an asset class, right? So that already puts a certain expectation on a minimum return. Then there's a larger point of, let's say we've invested in 20 companies in one fund, and the nature of early stages, that a lot of companies will die. I mean, that's the nature of how any early stage business is, right? Whether it's venture funded or not, a lot of businesses die. Then a lot of businesses don't find they survive but don't necessarily, scale up enough because the idea doesn't have that scalability. So then the onus of returning and beating all of those other sort of metrics comes onto a handful of companies. And that's what is a prism that leads VCs to look at only certain sectors specifically to invest. Now on the burn part, I think a lot of founders have talked about how, what is this burning money? I don't know of a single business, which doesn't actually lose money when they start. Not a single business. All the legacy companies who are talking about, this VC business of, allowing you to burn money. Some of the biggest brands, you take Maggie, lost money for decades, not even years, decades, okay? So it's bullshit to say that, VCs are stupid and they're giving money. We are not giving money to burn. There is a certain experimentation you need in early stage. There is some velocity because of which that experimentation can lead to, which is what we all bet on. We are not stupid, we are not giving money to burn. We are giving money because businesses per se need money. Money begets more money. That's a simple sort of equation of why a business needs money to begin with. Now, can you be profitable on your own? Of course you can. But there's a certain scale and opportunity that VCs bet on, which is why they give you that scale up money, technically. So sometimes those experiments work and sometimes they don't. I mean, you look at R&D budgets. If in the countries which have very large R&D budgets, or AWS or Amazon has large R&D budgets, right? Are there how many ideas actually see fruition, let alone make money? So the lifeblood of growth is innovation. Innovation, unfortunately, does require capital, which does go down to zero. But it's not stupid money. So I think it's very important to understand the business. And now, having said that context, I want to open it up to whoever wants to ask whatever questions. I'm happy to answer. Because I think it's important for you to understand why VCs take some decisions and why they say no to some businesses or to some founders also. Hi.
My name is Smridhi Seth and I am the co-founder of Right Plus AI. We are in the generative AI space. Talking about taking from a point of stupid money and venture capitalists knowing how they invest. For early stage
But we make a lot of mistakes also.
Right. For early stage investment, there are some venture capitalists who look for a strong team, some look for some revenue. So what do you look for when you choose to invest in pre-seed or seed?
Look, we also have to adapt to what is happening in the market, right? We also have to be very, very nimble and respond to a new opportunity. Now, the new opportunity may or may not see fruition. So in generative AI, for example, the perceived wisdom today is that it requires a lot of capital. So then a fund like ours would probably sit out that whole journey because we don't have that kind of capital to give. Maybe it's for a private equity player to fund that, right? I think Sam Altman famously made that statement that 10 million is not going to cut it for anybody in Gen AI, right? Maybe he's right, maybe he's not. Maybe the second, sort of version of Gen AI will require lesser money, more use cases will be, I don't know. I mean, I think the answers are always very, very diffused, which is why VCs make the mistakes they do. So again, this popular mythology that how stupid was this VC to have said no to that fund, that company went on to become so big. The thing is that we are making decisions with imperfect sort of data points and understanding of the future, the road ahead. And there are personal biases as well, right? So there's a famous story of a very storied investor in Silicon Valley who said no to Google and, sorry, can I take Google's name? No. So, but the thing is that, there were so many search engines that had failed till then. Yahoo was a big monster. So they worked on that imperfect knowledge. Now, who could have looked into the brains of Larry Page and Sergey Brin and see, ye to koi aur hi log hai. So it's very, very hard actually to make those investment decisions. So what we look for, I mean, for Rukam specifically, to answer your question specifically, we do look for, I think founders make all the difference. It's not the category. I think a great founder will create a category, and we've seen that repeatedly across the globe. And a bad founder, even in a very large category, will build a zero business. So I think it's all about founders for us.
Archana, happy to connect.
Hi.
So I just have a small question. I don't know whether it is apt or not.
Everything is apt.
Okay.
You can ask any questions.
Okay. I come from an alcohol background, and we are into creating a new category.
As in drinking or making of it?
So our journey has been very interesting. We are teetotalers, which have turned into creating a category. So people who have funded in our company, they have told हम घोड़े पे पैसा लगा रहे हैं. So I have people back from Red Bull and all who have supported us. So now what problem I face when I come to a VC is that they love our product. They say we love the founders.
What's your product?
We are into Barney's Hard Seltzer. It's a zero sugar, low calorie alcohol that we've got to India for the first time.
You should always put a product pitch when you're asking a question. Yeah.
So now what happens is they're very skeptic about the fact that it is such a new category. India being addicted to alcohol, we know this fact that people do not start their day without alcohol. I'm talking about the young generation, not the older generation. But they're so addicted, yet people are skeptic about a new category. We already have evolved things in life, but why don't we experiment in building something which is very unique and new?
So like I said, it's a function of, the amount of money, say, an investor can give you. And see, educating a consumer about a new category or a new idea is very, very, very hard. Very, 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 very hard. I mean, I can't even emphasize on how hard it is. Not to say it shouldn't be built, not to say that investors should not back it. But like I said, like I explained, that there's a certain period in which there has to be that escape velocity to get our return. So that's number one issue why a lot of investors will play safe. Again, they'll say, oh, we back innovation, but most investors would like to play safe. So that's one reason. Second, specifically to alcohol, the issue that a lot of investors, including us, we face, and the reason we don't invest is because alcohol requires, it's so regulatory complex, every state, every city, so it becomes, so what is the kind of businesses that VCs want to do? See, early stage is a lot of risk, right? A lot of different kind of risk. So there's a founder risk, market risk, pricing, बहुत सारे risk हैं. Then on top of it, if you have a very deep regulatory risk, then it becomes very, very, very hard to make money. Very hard. Having said that, not to say that you can't make money. Again, I'm clarifying that, which is why I'm again saying, see, it's important to understand that does your business at a particular time, is a VC the right investor, or maybe a family office maybe a better investor, or maybe you grow it to a point, get a PE, because PEs have different risk appetite, different teams. They have far deeper ability to manage a lot of complexities. So it's important to understand who fits in where and in your category and at your stage. But I know you have a follow-up question.
No,
ask a follow-up question? Yeah?
As much
I
time as
think
you
we'll
have.
connect offline. with
Alright, sure.
And sometimes the LPs themselves prohibit you
Sometimes,
from...
yeah. In some categories, there are, so our investors also have deep sort of personal or religious or their own business outcome sort of, guidelines that they give us. So that also, so a lot of LPs globally now don't want to do things, which has either high sugar or alcohol or any vice related sort of categories. So it's a function of many things. But I think one reason alcohol specifically is almost a no-no for a lot of VCs is because of the regulatory sort of, and we just saw what happened in India. Regulation is a big sort of dampener for growth, and in that kind of time period that a VC needs it in.
I just want to add one thing here. If we don't focus to be the game changers, then it is always going to be Diageo or Pernod. Then there will be no other small.
No, that's not true. There's a lot of space in India, between the big consumer brands that exist and what can we build. Because the consumer base, we've got 1.4 billion. So, I say this very often on panels. India में कोई भी business बना लो, बड़ा business बन सकता है. It's just what is the appetite the founder has and what is the right sort of niche you've picked up. That's what matters.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Sunena.
Hi, Sunena.
I have a fashion e-commerce brand. We do handmade leather shoes. So I've been running since 2015 and I've become very headstrong after 8 years that I want to raise funds. So since about one and a half years, every conversation, every accelerator, every program that I've been a part of, trying to understand, and I still don't have a path as to how it starts, except I've sent a few cold mails and connected with my immediate network to understand. So there are two questions that I have. First is there are a lot of opinions that are there on fundraising, right? People say, oh, you don't need to raise, and if you raise, find the right investor, and so on and so forth. I've also understood from few VCs that they say you're not a scalable business, because I will speak about my brand. We're an e-commerce footwear brand, and we make handmade leather shoes. So we make very niche styles for men like loafers and brogues. So my question to you, if I as a founder, very clear that I want to raise funds, particularly maybe from a venture capitalist or like you said, I'm assuming that's private equity investors,
Yeah, right.
very clear about doing that. What should be the path for me? And I know that I have only gained a limited number of sales because of the limited cash flow that I have, yet profitable since 8 years. So what would be your guidance for
So,
me?
first of all, again,
is
I
it
just-
catching you at the conversation because saying, hey, fund my company?
No, so
Yeah.
two answers to this. One is the again, I think what happens with a lot of conversations in the startup ecosystem is that it's devoid of nuance. So there's a point when everything is burn, and then now it's profit. So it's not true that VCs are only looking for profit, which means what they're actually looking for is a very difficult balancing act, which is growth and understanding that you have to get to profitability. A founder has to know that at the core, that this business has to make money. So at any point, can your top line and your bottom line merge? Okay, that's a very core understanding. But ultimately, business exists for creating profits. That's it. There's no other reason for a business to exist, right? Now, what VCs, like I said, because we have to return money and it has to have a certain sort of rate of sort of growth attached to that capital that we are giving. So growth is equally important, right? Now, if the growth is muted but there's profit, you're less likely to get any love from any VC specifically. Now, on the point of how should you go about it, every VC makes exceptions to their so-called thesis. So, as a founder, it's your job to do that hard sell, to know, and again, do the groundwork. I tell this to our portfolio founders all the time. Like, all of us in this room have been brought up to say, IIT jana hai, IIM jana hai. So, there's a part to it, right? You prepare for it. Similarly, for investors, do the work, find out what are the soft or hard touches that an investor will respond to. And do a good sales pitch. There is no other way. A founder, unfortunately or fortunately, has to be the main ambassador for everything. So even a warm introduction doesn't really cut it, unless and until you know and you can really, you've done the work and you know how to speak to the investor. to create a convincing sort of reason for them to come in. I hope that answers your question.
Hello, my name is Dolly Hussain.
Hi, Dolly.
I am founder of Smart Edge. It's a platform for innovators. I've been an innovator myself last 38 years, innovated enough, and I feel that there is a dire need for especially women to innovate, and ideas like what have been just discussed. They need to really get the necessary capital but the problem is that they are not able to find the right investors and that matchmaking. Currently building the platform for doing this matchmaking, and through parallelly developing a venture studio where I can bring in my personal expertise. So I wanted to know what is the kind of funding possible for the platform business.
So we don't do platform business only because the kind of capital we give is not sufficient. So like I had mentioned earlier also, every fund also decides on the categories to fund where they can capitalize it enough. Whether it's the first check, second check, third check, a lot of funds including ours, we all have this thing that we get the first check, but we also want to double down in case the founders need more capital from us. There's something called pro rata, which is that you continue to stay invested in the same proportion, so you do give that founder more money, right? So if you're a small fund, I mean, again, like I said, on generative AI, because now at this point, what we know about Gen AI is it requires a lot of capital to get to some sort of scale. I think Divya, who was talking about a healthcare business, again, healthcare requires a lot of capital for a very long hold. So again, we would not be the right investors for those businesses because we don't have that kind of capital.
But it is not, it's the health tech, not the healthcare.
Both health tech and even health tech requires a long time to sort of generate.
So I have mentored in past some of the startups which have bootstrapped to almost about 20 crore business, working in 14 countries, have almost in their category they are number one across the globe. Likewise, I have taken one of these startup, I can't name them, right from college to being funded by Vinod Khosla and Peter Thiel and others. So I have that track record, but how do you really translate that into the business?
I think if you, so again, I think, if Vinod Khosla and Peter Thiel have invested in companies that you mentor, that's a good starting point, right? Because they know your work and they have a lot more money than I do. So that's always useful.
But right now my focus is on women entrepreneurs.
If I can finish my answer, please.
Yeah, sorry.
So irrespective of your focus, the question is how do you first get money in, right?
Yeah.
And women don't have to be funded by women. I mean, there are enough men who also want to fund women. So it's a question of, what is it? Where is your core strength sort of appreciated, and already you don't have to make that hard sell, right? That's number one step I would say to any fundraise. Equally, like when I'm fundraising. When I go into a sort of a cold meeting where they may not know my track record or may not know what I've built or am building, those are always hard conversations, irrespective of gender or irrespective of which geography you have those conversations in, right? So I think the first step is always where there is a little bit of respect or a little bit of understanding of what you've already achieved. So those would be the first sort of port of call is what I would say. And the second piece I think is also, again, there are lots of funds who are called VCs, but they do have a lot more capital at their, that they raise. And they have very specific programs as well for women because maybe that's a commitment that their LPs have asked them to sort of have. So those would be the next, immediate port of calls is what I would imagine.
Thank you very much.